Hello, I'm Buyle and I'm working at the Flemish government in Belgium. Also, I am a researcher at the Internet and Data Science Lab at Ghent University. Today, I would like to share our insights on the impact of 5G and edge on data. A study conducted at IMEC, the Internet and Data Science Lab at Ghent and Antwerp University. Now, as data-driven devices continue to permeate our society, we see new devices enter our homes, our company, and our smart cities at a lightning speed. Smart devices, such as those from Google Nest and Apple, are just a few examples of this phenomenon. Now, with this influx of devices, there has been a shift from centralized applications to decentralized cloud-connected devices. Also, the emergence of 5G accelerates this process. Now, this shift has caused two problems. On the one hand, we face a privacy and transparency problem because we lose control over our data. For instance, in this case, we have a vacuum cleaner in our living room that's in fact streaming all the data, not only of the sensors of the vacuum cleaning, but also the data of our living room, literally to the cloud of the vendor, in this case, Amazon. This is the case, in fact, for me as a citizen, an end user, but also the case for me as an entrepreneur. For instance, for farmers who have a tractor with many sensors, all their data about their crops, what they're doing, their planning process is streamed to the vendor. So on the one hand, the privacy and also an IP problem, but on the other hand, we get lack of a level playing field because stunning local companies are not able to build upon our data because we cannot share it, and are not able to provide me with all the new applications that will give me benefits when I want a better temperature in my house, a better control of my temperature, or as a farmer, better information about how I'm growing my crops. So as mentioned, both privacy as well an innovation problem. Now, in order to better understand what's happening, so better understanding the impact of 5G and edge on data, it might be helpful to look at the history of cloud computing. Now, in the 2000s, cloud computing and decentralization increased. Can I recap this? Now, to better understand the impact of 5G on edge and data, we have to take a look at the past and look at the history of cloud computing. Now, in the 2000s, cloud computing centralization increased efficiency. By centralizing computing resources, though the costs and complexity were reduced, allowing many organizations to better align computing with business needs. Let me jump to the 2010. The Internet of Things emerged and everything became connected. but also became connected to the cloud. However, as we've seen, centralization raises questions about efficiency and control. Why control? Well, I lose control over my data. And also on the level of efficiency. When I would ask a edge device that's connected to the cloud, hey Siri, can you turn the light off? And 1 hour I would ask, hey Siri, can you put the light on again? In the overall ecosystem, I wouldn't gain any profit of energy. I even would lose energy because of the cost of the round trip to the cloud and the processing power in the data center. So we see in that case that cloud-connected devices, cloud-connected edge devices have a huge footprint. Now, nowadays, in the 20s, edge is becoming the new cloud. Cloud-connected devices, although create new challenges and opportunities for data management. Let's take this example of edge computing in the context of mobility. Of course, when something happens, we have sensors at the crossroads here, and the data doesn't need to travel to the cloud and back. So we have a faster response speed, which is an advantage because the data doesn't have to take the round trip. Also, on the level of data that's shared, you have a lower bandwidth because by processing the data at the edge devices, we don't need to send the entire data stream to the data center. And another benefit is the increased reliability. Imagine a failure in the connection or the data center. In this case, edge devices can continue to operate. Now, one of the challenges that I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation is to create a level playing field where we put citizens and businesses back in control of their data and fix the transparency problem, but also fix the innovation problem. And in the region of Vlaanderen, for many years, we started to investigate how we can realize this challenge. We started our journey in 2010 together with Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who invented the World Wide Web over 30 years ago. So we noticed on the web, but I can explain the similar story that I'm going to explain for a user. I can explain it for a business. For example, in the context of agriculture, that big tech companies are harvesting a lot of data. And we know in Europe and also outside Europe, there's a legal ceiling. So they are in kind of a rat race of gathering data, but laws in Europe eventually will tell them that this is not the way forward. This is the finite data race. And the problem is that because the data is locked in those silos, that current challengers, innovative local companies, they don't have access to the data. And therefore, we need a course correction. This is the vision of Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the founder of the World Wide Web, but also the vision of the Flemish government in Belgium. And we did a paradigm shift, shifting from data controlled by a company, which causes the innovation and privacy problem, to data controlled by the individual. This means that I become in control of my own data, for instance, the data of my temperature in my living room, my energy consumption. And I can share this data with who I want to share it, for how long I want to share it. This means that as I am in control of my data, I can share it with stunning companies that don't need to focus on gathering data, but can focus on the added value. In this way, we could say that the value of the data drops, but the value of the services on top of it raises. Now, how can we imagine this concept of putting users, both citizens and businesses, back in control of their data? Nowadays, when I use applications on the web or cloud-connected devices, such as for temperature, or devices when I go spotting about my heartbeat, or devices on my tractor when the context of agriculture, all these data are streamed to the cloud of specific vendors and stored in their applications. So if I move from one to another application, my data and all my knowledge won't be there anymore. I will get a cold start. This is the current situation on the left hand of the slide, where data is stored by service providers. In the context of the paradigm shift, we shift to the right hand of the slide. There I will have my personal data vault. It could be also a data vault of my company. You could imagine it as an online memory stick where I choose what data I will share and for how long with which party. So the data isn't stored anymore in the different applications and clouds, but is in my data vault, something like an online memory stick. And this eventually will fix, on the one hand, the privacy and transparency problem, because I will always know which data I am sharing with who, and I can always revoke my consent and stop sharing this data. But also, as I'm able to share it with who I want to share it, I create a level playing field for all the companies that will build services on top of it to make my life more easy, cheaper, faster, and healthier. Now, what are the challenges of making data portable? So that's all about interoperability. Interoperability is the ability that my data can flow between different organizations and different applications. And therefore, in Flanders, we faced several interoperability levels using the European interoperability framework. On the technical level, we must be able to connect our data vault, where we are in control, our pod, to any application. That we can compare with the web. When the web over 30 years ago started, the clue was that we needed to focus on standards. Any browser, so the application that we use to serve the web, was able to connect to any server and also any website, we were able to put links to another website without having a physical handshake on beforehand. That's because of standards. In the context of the data vaults, we have a similar concept. It's also an invention of Sir Tim Berners-Lee, who did a course correction on the precious web that he invented over 30 years ago to put citizens again in control. And the idea is that any application, like any browser, could connect to any pod. It's a personal data server, just like browsers connect to regular servers. So the clue is really about standards, and there are we using the solid protocol. So this is the technical interoperability. Next level is the semantic interoperability. In order to get a scalable ecosystem where I can give a fine-grained consent on my data, and I'm able to share my data, and it can be reused immediately without any technical people converting my data, analysts interpreting my data. So I must ensure that my data is machine readable. So there we built on the principles of the semantic web, which allow us to make the data self-describing. And in Flanders, we run an interoperability program, which builds upon international standards, and it's called Open Standards for Linked Organizations. OSLO is the acronym. It's the interoperability program of Digital Flanders with participation of public sector, private sector, and academia. Then on top, we have ecosystems. This is how different organizations within the public sector, private sector, or combination of public and private form an ecosystem and align their business processes. And the fourth level is legal interoperability. This is the legislation that creates the framework in Europe and beyond to be able to share this data within a legal context with, on top of it, an integrated governance. So this cake or lasagna with different layers ensures that data can flow and can be reused. Now, I often use the concept of data sharing, but in fact today in Flanders, we are using the concept of collaborating data. This means that if I would like to apply for a new provider for my gas or electricity, that I don't need to share all my data. I can only share the insights. Better for privacy, better for transparency, better for bandwidth. So on the edge, an algorithm, artificial intelligence, AI, will process this data and will only share the insights. The data never leaves my house or never leaves my personal data vault, my pod. But the algorithm uses federated learning. This means that this algorithm is trained with other algorithms to improve it over and over without losing control of my data. Now, if we take a look of the current situation in Flanders, then I could definitely state that we are a frontrunner in this context. We have a lot of insights in edge AI and hardware because we have top-notch research institutes, including IMEC, who's doing research on semiconductors and nanotechnology, and was founded in 1984 in the context of Flanders technology and innovation. Also, we are a frontrunner in data tech, focusing on, as I mentioned, interoperability to be able to share this data in a new data economy, cross-sector, so cross data space data can be reused. We have the concept of the citizen in control, the solid protocol, which allows us to have data vaults where any application can connect to my vault, my data pod, and I stay in control of my data, sharing it with who I want to share it, for how long I want to share it. And last but not least, we have the federated learning, which allows us to have AI on the edge in order to share the insights instead of the raw data. So from data sharing to data collaboration. And having all these pieces of the puzzle, we could say in Flanders we are in a perfect storm. We have the knowledge at the level of the research institutes. The government is ready and creates a spark, an impulse to allow to set up these initiatives. And last but not least, our companies are ready and are adopting these principles, as well as technology at a lightning speed. Now, as a wrap-up, we've seen that the key strengths of Edge are the responsiveness and lower bandwidth. Think about of the mobility example earlier. Second, we have a smaller ecological footprint because there's no need for a round trip to the cloud. Because we create a level playing field, allowing companies to provide new services on top of our data, we increase the innovation capacity. Now, cloud-connected edge devices create new challenges. We've seen that by merely connecting these devices to the cloud, we have the risk of having a vendor lock-in and a loss of transparency. Therefore, in Flanders, we focused on the concept of solid to put users again in control of their data. So these users could be me as a citizen with the data of the temperature of my living room, my energy consumption, my data when I go sporting, such as my heartbeat, or the data from entrepreneurs, from businesses, such as farmers streaming their data to the cloud now. User in control. Second solution is the data portability through interoperability, allowing reuse of data without the need to transform it over and over because it's already machine readable in line with international standards. And last but not least, switching from collaborating data, sharing the insights, instead of sharing the raw data. This can be accomplished via AI and federated learning. So I'm looking forward to to connect our edge strategy with you, and I'm looking forward to your question. Thank you for your attention.